Cool. I think we had some slight technical problems there, so I've asked this before, but I'll jump back in. Our magic time machine. Iain, I have a question for you. So, do you feel that Eddie Howe is the person to take this team forward? Do you feel like this is his team, or do you feel maybe it could potentially flourish under a different manager? What are your thoughts? Are you sort of for Howe, or do you think maybe it could be maybe a personnel change would benefit Newcastle? What are your thoughts?
I am very much for Eddie Howe. I think time will prove that Eddie Howe is the first English elite manager for decades. Eddie Howe has this ability to improve every player that he's working with. It's not just Eddie Howe, it's Jason Tindall and it's the rest of the coaching gang. But every single player that he inherited, and that was in a championship squad that was struggling to win a point in the Premier League. More than half of the team is still those players. So the way he has brought Joe Linton on, the way Almiron and Murphy have completely overachieved from what we ever thought they could possibly do. Um, Up until Monday night, Fabian Schär looked like a world class centre half, and he couldn't even get into Steve Bruce's team. So Eddie's got something about him which improves players. They bought really well, and these were Amanda Staveley and Eddie Howe's choices to bring Bruno and Isak, Botman, and Gordon in. They've improved since they've come in. So Eddie is the one for me that we stick with. However, I will say what I think is uncertain. It was a it was such a cohesive project when Amanda Staveley was the front woman of it, and they got on so well with her and her husband got on so well with Eddie Howe. That was the team. And when they've left, I don't know if Eddie feels like he's lost a major supporter and he's now working with people who he's got to work with rather than people who he would choose to work with. I'm not sure. But certainly this season, there doesn't seem to be that single focus of taking us to the very top, which there was. And it was like a relentless bandwagon rolling towards that. And now there's all sorts of things that seem to be interfering and tipping up with it. So without her there, I don't know if Eddie has got the free pass that he would have had. Um, Certainly, if he keeps producing teams that produce results like losing at home to Brighton and to West Ham, no disrespect to those sides, but we're a strong team. We would be winning those games at home, even under Steve Bruce. Then, you know, it's a results game, isn't it? And they may think that the guys might think it's time for a change. I hope not, because Eddie Howe will prove what a good manager he is over time, and I'm just hoping he does it with Newcastle.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there, Iain, about it's easy to assume from a distance that because the turnaround was so quick when he first came in, Newcastle just immediately bought a really great squad, a bit like City kind of did when the money came in there, or Chelsea before that. It was actually it was a lot of the same players that Steve Bruce had before, and Eddie Howe suddenly got playing like Champions League players and are still integral parts of the team now. So I think he does deserve massive credit for that. Once again, we hope they're not playing like Champions League players on
Don't
Saturday.
worry, they didn't play like National League players on bloody Monday, I tell you.
Anyway, I think there we'll take a little pause and have a word from our provider. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. So, Finn, which Newcastle players have you been worrying about? Who's been keeping you up at night this week with cold sweats and terror approaching Saturday? And are there any Palace players that you think could stand to particularly hurt Newcastle this weekend?
I mean, can I name the entire Newcastle squad, even the subs, even the players who aren't on the list? No, I think Iain listed the ones that I've already sort of thought about. I mean, I'm a big fan of Alexander Isak. I think he's. I remember when he was playing in the Basque region for Sociedad, and like he's a really technically gifted player, and he's like in a time where number nines are quite rare, or good number nines, I should say. And it's like I think Newcastle really have a gem in him. I feel like he's a really good striker. He does have that tendency. I think again, Iain pointed it out that he does sometimes have that tendency to take one or too many touches, or to try and hang on to the ball for a bit longer than he should have, instead of releasing one of his other teammates. But he's definitely someone I feel is going to be pivotal in the game. Also, Bruno Guimaraes, like really, really top level midfielder, and I feel it's going to be an interesting battle between him and players like Decore and Devilny in the Palace team. In terms of Palace and who's going to be important, well, I think both teams, as we've sort of alluded to earlier, have had real issues with converting chances and scoring goals this season, particularly Crystal Palace. And I really feel like it's John Philip Mateta needs a really good game because well, we have nobody else. And I think he's really going to have his work cut out to sort of try and bully those Newcastle defenders who are not easily physically intimidated and are quite like strong themselves. I feel like even though it's been a pretty terrible season for Crystal Palace, I was even discussing this with a Tottenham fan at work today. One of the good things is, even when you have a terrible season, usually that's when you have things like youngsters coming through. And I think Devilny's like breakthrough into the squad has been a real sort of like ray of sunlight in what's been quite a gloomy few months for Palace. I really think he'll probably be quite pivotal in the game, and hopefully, I mean, he's shown when I saw him playing against Fulham, he showed his defensive and passing capabilities, and then in the previous fixture against Aston Villa, he showed that he's really good in terms of attacking as well. So he's almost showcasing his box to box abilities. I hope we just don't ruin him and send him to the injury table too quickly, which seems to be happening with all of our players at the moment. Um, yeah, and then in terms of like other players, I think it's nice to see Ismaila Sarr get off the mark finally. Again, another player who's had real issues with converting chances. What could be interesting though is if Eberici Eze is fit and able to start, will that mean Sarr has to then be benched? It remains to be seen. Um, yeah, I also just want to go back quickly to when I was asking Iain about Eddie Howe. Again, I think it's a sign of a really good manager. Any good manager actually is a manager who improves players, and I think it's so true in terms of that Newcastle squad. Is that so many of those players would probably under a different manager probably wouldn't be in the first team, and probably wouldn't have progressed or developed in the way that they have. And I think it is actually I have to really tip my cap to Eddie Howe and the fact that he's taken players like Joe Linton, who was I know this has been repeated so many times, but was signed as a big tool target man and has been transformed into like a really pivotal midfielder who sort of connects play and is like really an integral actually to that Newcastle team. And yeah, he's done really well actually. I think with that Newcastle squad. It's just the problem is, as with even our manager, with our is like, how long can you go on with negative results? Unfortunately, even if fans love you, even if you seem to be doing the right thing, and the only reason I'm saying this out loud is also I'm echoing these thoughts about Oliver Glasner at the moment. I love Oliver Glasner, but I just feel there's this horrible lingering feeling that Crystal Palace might panic and press the eject button come January if nothing's improved. But yeah,
Have
I
you?
go ahead, Iain.
I was going to ask if you guys have any clue as to what happened. I know you sold Elise, but apart from that, why are Palace not burning it up like they did in the last 10, 12 games last season? Must have been top of the form league at the end of last season. You certainly spanked us when we came to Selhurst Park in April. 3-0, and we were lucky to get nil.
I mean, he's
Mateta dominated things that afternoon, by the way, or that evening.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's not one clear reason. I think it's a culmination of things such as there's been a lot of tinkering of the defense. So we had quite a solid defensive line and system, and then because of Palace's decision, which I don't agree with, to sell Joachim Andersen, who I thought was a really integral part of that defensive system, and someone who was able to actually also contribute really good diagonal long balls and was very assured and had a really good partnership with Mark Gahey. That is a big factor, changing the defense. You just said it there. Jean-Philippe Mateta had this purple run of form where he was just unstoppable. And it's great when strikers do that. But then the problem is when that dries up. And I think obviously his exploits for Palace last season and then with the French Olympic team over the summer just sort of seemed to drain him a bit. And when he came back, he's just been unable to sort of reciprocate or repeat that run of form. And then just I think Michael Olise, we were so lucky to have Michael Olise, and just missing that little edge of quality to finish things off and to sort of be calm on the ball. And just the fact that Michael Olise is doing so well at Bayern Munich at the moment it stands to that. And I just think, it's just a culmination of a few things. And I'm still confident Oliver Glasner's the guy who's going to get the best out of the team. I just don't know specifically if it's his team yet. A bit like how you said that Eddie Howe, that Newcastle team is Eddie Howe's. He's basically decided who he wants in that squad. I'm not 100% sure that's the case with Oliver Glasner. I think some of those players are ones that he's picked out. Others I feel he's been sort of handed and they've said, right, use this in your system. And maybe they haven't acclimatized to it yet.
Yeah, well, I think that I'd agree. Echo Finn's thoughts on that entirely. He's very good, Glasner. It's reassuring at picking out the exact things that are wrong and just saying them in a press conference, which does fill you with hope that he's got a solution. It's two big things it's bang on at the moment about the space between the lines being too big, which we've spoken about a few times in the podcast, and the lack of pace in their build-up play. So I think we'll see that manifested in a way this weekend with Palace sitting deep and moving the ball up the pitch as quickly as possible. But yeah, we'll just skip right through. I was going to ask about Mark Gahey, but it'll hurt me too much to hear the vision of him in a Newcastle shirt brought to life. So let's just skip straight through to the predictions. Start with you, Iain. How do you think it's going to go?
Well, my initial thought, given that we're the two of the three lowest scoring teams in Premier League, jokingly, I suggested that we would be 0-0. It would be a horrible game. Match of the Day would say that we played, but they couldn't find a highlight to show. It could be a game like that if our confidence is as shot as it seemed to be on at the end of the West Ham game. However, I think Eddie will pick the same team. He'll bring Dan Burn back, who was suspended. And I think he'll get everybody who was so poor a chance to redeem themselves, and I think they will. So I'm going to go, as I do with every Newcastle away game, that we'll win 3-1.
Excellent.
But I said that
That's
last
reassuring.
April, and we got absolutely caned. We got hammered.
Hammered, exactly. Well, I've actually gone non-ironically with your joking prediction, Iain. I think we'll be 0-0. I think it'll be a really dull game, and both teams will miss massive chances. And fundamentally, it'll peter out, and as you say, last on the running order on Match of the Day. What do you think, Finn? Slightly different take.
My take is the Palace defense is still leaky and unsure. So I'm pretty certain, no matter what happens, Newcastle will get on the score sheet. Will get at least a goal. I'm going to go... This sounds really negative. I think Newcastle are probably going to win 2-0, I think. And some people are going to go, you're a Palace fan. How can you say that? I was like, yeah, well, I've also got eyes in my head and I've seen us play. And I know in terms of the quality. And also, I mean, we have a lot of injured players. And I feel like that's something to point out. And it's like, I think a lot of those players are doing the best that they can in roles that they wouldn't usually be filling. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just really negative at the moment. I think Newcastle will probably get an away win and get back on track.
Excellent.
I do think you were right. You were right, Josh. If Eze's fit and starts, that increases the Palace chances of having a cutting edge. Another player which you've not mentioned, and Joe said she thought he was injured, but I think I'm a real fan of Adam Wharton. I mean, I think
he's out for a
bossed
couple of
last April
weeks,
as
but
well. Is he?
he's quality.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so he's had groin surgery. He basically was not the same player after Euros when he came back, and it was because, or at least has been blamed for the fact that he was nursing this groin problem. And yeah, he's out
Right.
for a couple of weeks while he recovers from that. But the sooner he can come back, the better. I think, as Finn says, Palace are at the moment just sort of scraping by, really trying not to pick up any more injuries until they can have more of a proper crack with the likes of Eze back up to full fitness. Eze might play this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't. I think Glasner really doesn't want to risk him because he's so integral that if he's not 100%, I think he'll hold off. But anyway, let's have a little pause there. And then we'll go really rapidly through some quiz questions at the end and wrap up the podcast.
This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day.
Okay, so I've put together a few questions for a segment that I'm calling Game Shola Amiobi. We've got a few questions about players who played for...
Excellent.
So Finn's head in his hand is used to
I've
every week. Like this. Basically, we've got players... 4 questions about players who've played for both Palace and Newcastle. I'll ask you 2 each. It's multiple choice. If your opponent gets it wrong, you will have a chance to steal.
Okay.
The questions lean to one side or the other, so I'm not going to give you free reign of them. I'm going to ask Finn first. Darren Ambrose played nearly 200 times for Newcastle and Palace in his career. His time at the latter is perhaps best remembered for a League Cup screamer away at Fergie's United. What I want you to tell me, Finn, is who described it as the best goal they'd seen from an away side at Old Trafford? Was it A, Ravel Morrison, B, Sir Alex Ferguson, C, Gary Neville, or D, Darren Ambrose himself?
Oh, you cheeky git. Putting that in at the end. I want to say, I mean, I don't think it was Ravel Morrison. I don't think Ravel Morrison cares that much. Oh, God. Who were the other options? Can you read the options again to me? It was B.
B, Sir Alex. C, Gary Neville.
I'm going to go with, I think it's Gary. I'm going to say Gary Neville, but you're going to tell me.
Final answer, Gary Neville.
Gary Neville, but you're going to tell me it's someone else.
It was Gary Neville. 1 point on the board. Something Palace would take on Saturday for sure. Iain, for you.
Yes.
Shola Amiobi featured a combined 352 times for Newcastle and Palace. Admittedly, only 4 of them were for Palace, but that's makes him a stalwart. What I want you to tell me is, who was he playing for when Newcastle scouted him? Was it A, Walker Central Boys Club, B, Newcastle Blue Star, C, Wallsend Boys Club, or D, Athletic Bilbao?
They all come from Wallsend Boys Club, but I think Shola was playing for Walker.
Is that your final answer, Walker?
Yep.
Walker's correct. One apiece.
Shola is still involved, at
He's head of like
Newcastle.
loans or something, isn't he? Like, some weird role.
It might be Steve Harper, who is I can't remember now. But yeah, he's involved on a daily basis, Shola. Yeah.
Good man.
Kev, my fellow Daily Newcastle, is good pals with him because
Oh, really?
Kev works quite closely with him at different times.
Lovely.
So there you go.
What
Not that meant I knew. I just remembered that he played for Walker, not Wallsend, because they all come from Wallsend, don't they?
Yeah, Michael Carrick sprung to mind. I think I saw the name.
Yeah, we never got him. Peter Beardsley.
Yeah.
Quite a few of them.
Nice.
Maybe even Alan Shearer as a younger boy. There you go.
Wallsend, some magic in the water at Wallsend Boys Club.
Yeah.
Finn, Patrick Van Aanholt played plenty of times for Palace and notched 606 memorable minutes for Newcastle. Who is his famous footballing cousin? Is it A, Leroy Fer, B, Jeffrey Brumer, C, Luciano Narsing, or D, David Matthew Van Aanholt?
Did he play for Newcastle, Patrick Van Aanholt?
He had a very brief loan. Yeah.
Loan period. He was good, actually, but then he went and played for Sunderland, which means he's not even allowed back in the city.
I remember him playing for Sunderland, so I just thought, oh, God, that's yeah. So out of all the players, I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to say, is it Leroy Fer?
Spot on. Yeah, Leroy Fer's bob on.
How do you know that?
Yeah.
I don't. I just.
So that was lucky dip for that one.
The universe.
Amazing. Josh says, who's his famous cousin, and then lists 4 footballers I've never heard of. No, I have heard of Leroy Fer.
You avoided the red herring.
Leroy Fer for a bit.
You avoided the red herring there of David Matthew Van Aanholt, who is
the
chief operating officer of Goodman Logistics UK Holding Limited. Found him on UK, whatever you call it.
It's just probably a different cousin. That's all. He just doesn't play football.
He might be, yeah, he might be less famous one. Okay, Iain, to level things out, I want you to tell me, why was Johan Cabaye denied access to the USA on a pre-season tour in 2011? Was it A, he'd been accused of breeding Chauceys, a designer cat banned in 19 states for sale? B, he'd been accused of not settling a dental bill? C, he'd angered border control by singing the Marseillaise every time he saw an American flag? Or D, his jawline was deemed too sharp to carry through airport security?
Nice one. I think subconsciously you've gone back to the jawline for your little jokey, quirky part 4.
Yeah.
To give me the tip that it's because he hadn't paid his dentist. It was a debt, wasn't it? It wouldn't let him in.
Wow, maybe it's a red herring. Is it your final answer?
That's my final answer.
You are correct. I don't have a tiebreaker available, so I think you're just going to have to take the draw.
2-2, that'll do.
I'll do.
2-2,
Why not?
Both sides happy with that.
Well played. 100% each. 100% records each. That's
yeah. It's like Klopp and Guardiola.
We love Cabaye, and then we hated him when he went to Palace. And it's not his fault that he went to Palace, of course. It's Pardew, wasn't it? Pardew had the relationship with him at Newcastle, sold him to Paris Saint-Germain, then took over at Palace, and he went back to play for Pardew. But yeah, it was a dagger to our hearts because he was the first midfielder we'd had for ages.
Oh, he was
a great player.
What a man!
He was quality. He slotted straight into a really beardy Palace era in midfield as well.
Palace era.
Eddie Howe and Johan Cabaye. All right. Well, I think that's about all we have time for today. So thank you both very much for joining us. Thanks, Iain, for coming on the pod with us.
You're very, very welcome. I've enjoyed it. And I don't often get asked more than one question in a quiz. and keep getting them right. So thank you for that. 7-1 it was the last time I had a quiz against Kev. He won't let me forget it.
All right, if Kev comes on, I'll ask him some real tricky questions. We can set you up together. Actually, I'll give you a few straight balls and Kev the hardest ones possible.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's when I'll still get them wrong, and he'll get all of the extra marks for answering my questions as well. Yeah. But I like the thought, Josh. Thank you very much for that.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. Yeah, we'll hope everyone tunes back in tomorrow. As we always say, if you've enjoyed it, give us a 5-star review. Helps with being discovered on all platforms. And yeah, see you tomorrow where we do some more previewing of Saturday's rambunctious 0-0.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.